everybody. Happy Tuesday to you. Happy Veterans Day.
Thank you for paying your taxes.
I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and this is my fabulous co-host.
I am the retired Army Sergeant First Class. Today is a very special day.
It's a very special day. I love it. I love it. You know, it's interesting because I've talked about this before. I homeschool my kids, and my little ones watch some videos about Veterans Day today, and I think it finally hit my youngest one what it started. I mean, she's 9, so I guess that's you kind of like start to put it together, right? And she comes into my room and she goes, I think Grandpa was a veteran.
Oh, wow.
And I said, we've done it. We figured it out.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
And so it was just a really, it was a really nice moment today. And then my other daughter comes in and she goes, can I message Grandpa and can I tell him thank you? And I said, you sure can.
Wow.
You sure can. And so they're putting it together and it's good. So fun fact, my dad is here today to join us. Speaking of which, because he is retired Navy for a long time. I'll let him tell you how long and all that. And when he comes on, so I'll have to find out if she ever did in fact message him and all that. So I'll have to find out if
you might have just spoiled the surprise.
I might have just. Where's my bell?
You might have spoiled the surprise.
I blew it already. We're 3 minutes into the show.
Already.
Okay. All right. So tonight we are talking about war and peace, the truth about service, sacrifice, and humanity. And we have been on this trek the last couple weeks of starting to peel labels off of things. We talked the first week about the labels that we have and our need as humans to belong to something. And that's why we are so quick to grasp onto these micro labels, as I call them, as opposed to just the label of human being. And then that was super fun last episode because we went 3D with Sang-D and talked about race, and that was a great conversation. And I wanted to thank you and Sang for the space that you held with me on that episode, because I was not comfortable going into that conversation. It was a tough one for me to go into. And so anyway, thank you for that.
Thank you for going in with it anyway.
It was a great conversation. It really was. And I think it also told me that more conversation around that topic is needed for sure. And I'm looking forward to what the future looks like with that. And so as we continue to peel off these labels tonight, we're going to talk about that label of veteran or service member, or whatever that looks like. And so I'm excited to dive into this with you and my dad coming up here in just a minute. We'll bring him on. Any opening thoughts?
Yeah, I love the title that you gave it as far as war and peace. And so when I sat with that for myself to see, okay, because we are organic in our conversations, right? Mm-hmm. We don't use no scripts. So I'm like, okay, what direction does my mind want to go with that? And it's one of the biggest things that I discovered as I'm peeling off those military labels and those military identities that I have for those 24 years is that at 19 years old, I gave my life to death. Mm. And that war and peace was not just the physical, it was the emotional, and how much war and peace I dealt with in my own mind from that young 19-year-old teenager to the 43-year-old veteran who was medically retired.
Yeah.
Career coming to an end not by choice. And then all that in between of who I get to be today in that veteran, or even close to that disabled veteran label.
Yeah.
Right. So that war and peace for me is not just the activity of the war and peace, but within us as veterans, that war and peace of how we deal with who we get to be today outside of that uniform.
Right. And I've been thinking about it a little bit this past couple of weeks too, as we've been coming up to this topic. And if it's ever meant anything to me to have that label as like a veteran's daughter, or because
Mm-hmm.
and what does that look like for me? What did it mean to me? And I did a lot of thinking back to that time growing up, when my dad was in the Navy, and what that was like for me at the time, and if that meant anything to me. So I'll be talking a little bit about that coming up
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff as well.
that's an important part of this War and Peace, because the
Yeah.
children of veterans are
Yeah.
just as impacted as the veteran and the wife or the father.
Yeah.
Everybody's impacted by that War and Peace.
Yeah. And in very different ways,
Mm-hmm.
because it was a different, I lived with my mom, and so I didn't get to experience a lot, but because this is a very military area here with the sub base and the Coast Guard Academy and all those things, a lot of my friends were military children as well. But we had a very different experience because they lived with their parent that was going, and so it was interesting to look back on that too, and what did
Oh
that
yeah.
mean, and all of that at that time. So one of the things that we want to say is a big gratitude to all of our veterans today, for sure. Thank you, Brittany, for joining us this evening. And with the gratitude, we're going to step into our quick gratitude video from some of our hosts on the Breakthrough Show Network. And when we come back, through the
My
magic
peoples.
of broadcasting,
Oh,
my dad will be on the screen. All right.
the magic.
The magic. We'll be
The
right back
magic.
after this.
Hi, I'm Margin Dugas. I co-host on Project Joy, and I would say what I'm most thankful for is my friends and family and being on the show.
This year, I am thankful for the lessons that have shaped me, the people who remind me of love, and the creative energy that flows through my everyday life.
I am Olivia Bunny, and this year I'm most thankful for the gift of life and music. This year, music has gotten me through so much, and it's just really shown me how important it is to be present. So that's what I'm thankful for this year.
I'm so grateful for all the people I've met through our show, my co-hosts who I find as my dear family, and the Breakthrough Show Network hosts and co-hosts, and Jessica Dugas, who makes it all possible.
My name is Leah. I'm a co-host on Project Joy, and I'm grateful for my family and Joy this year.
And this year, I am most grateful for other human beings who allow me to be fully me.
For the amazing people that I'm surrounded with. I'm so thankful for the accountability, the people that show up even when it's challenging or not convenient, and the love that we share together. On behalf of everybody at the Breakthrough Show Network, we are super thankful for you, and welcome back to the show to my dad, Greg Cushing. We're gonna put Dad right there. There we go, in the middle. I like your hat.
Yes, I love this hat too. I found it when I was shopping one day, and I said I really need to have a new hat, because I had an old one. A picture that you have of me has a really old hat that I had. It was kind of faded, and I said, I deserve a new hat, so I got this one.
There it is. Well, tell everybody about your history in the service. How long were you in for? How old were you when you joined? Tell us the things.
All right. I was 19 when I joined. I went in 1974. We were in the process of getting out of Vietnam, but we were still there. So to go in the military was a little bit frightening. I don't know what possessed me to go in. One day I walked down the street, and I walked beside a recruiting office, and I said, let me just walk in and see what they've got. And I did. And I liked what they were offering. So I joined up. I mean, it was that simple. My parents didn't even know I didn't tell anybody. I signed up without telling a soul, and then I went home and said, "Yeah, I signed up for the Navy." So, but they were thrilled because at the time, I wasn't really using my brain at all. I had taken a job with the county driving a truck, and something just spurred me on to go in the military. So I stayed in until 94, so 20 years. And I was on the submarine force. I spent all my time underwater. And people have always asked me, how in the world could you do that? And, it didn't faze me a bit when I was younger, but when I was getting near the end, it started to bother me. And that's what made me decide to go ahead and get out. I had originally thought I would go longer, but I could tell something had changed inside of me, and I was not comfortable anymore. I started thinking about the long time away from people and being underwater, and it started to bother me a little bit. And I said, I should probably get out now. This is a sign that I need, it's time. But yeah, it was a great adventure. I got to see a lot of things. In the submarine force, you don't really see any action, but you're right there with the rest of the troops. Trust me. You're at places where you can't imagine you would go.
Yeah.
And we were always ready, and we were always, you got messages that said, stand down, or said, get ready. And that's what we do. And so it was very exciting. I got to see a lot of the world. I went to a lot of different places, met a lot of nice people, and have a lot of good memories from it. So, would I do it again? It's hard to say. Things are different now. As well, it's a different world, and I don't know. We were pretty crazy back then. I'll say it that way. There was a lot of things they want us to do now. And people say, oh, well, the hazing and stuff. It's not a great thing, but it was a way for us to test the new recruits when they come on. When you're on a submarine, you have to be able to trust everybody with your life, and you are. And if there's somebody that can't handle the pressure, that's kind of what the hazing was leaning into. See if this person can handle pressure, and if he can't, then maybe we should, he might decide not to stay on the submarine force, or we give him some more training or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, there were people that over the years, we'd have a casualty and they'd run the other way, and there's nowhere to run to. You're under the ocean in a capsule, and you have to go and fix it. There's nobody to call. And that's something that every sailor on the submarine knows, that you're the fireman, and and the bomb expert or whatever, and you have to be ready to do anything.
Did you when you joined, Dad, did you think at all about what it would be like to have that label for the rest of your life of like veteran or service member?
I didn't at first, because I really wasn't sure how long I was going to stay in. I knew I could get a good education, and that was my first goal. And it seemed like it went so fast that before I knew it, I was halfway done, and I said, I should stay. I should just keep going and stay in. And I would say from that point on, I started thinking about it. I started thinking about retirement. It was still possible. What's that going to mean to me? There were times when I was when we would I would go with friends to places, states or whatever, cities that were away from the base. And when you got there, if you had a military, anything that said you were military, they treated you totally different than around the bases. I could walk into a restaurant and they would say, your meal's paid for. And I wouldn't even know who did it. There's somebody in there would pay for your meal, and it was was interesting to be appreciated that much, and I liked it. I liked the fact that people cared. I've been in a number of clubs like Elks Lodge and places like that, and the same thing happens when you walk into those places. It's like, there's a military guy here. Somebody would pick up the tab for me if I went in. So it was a nice feeling. I've always been very patriotic, so it made me feel good when somebody would say I was a veteran. So
yeah. What about you, Farron? Tell, for anybody that doesn't, I mean, we mentioned that you are retired Army on the show before, but catch everybody up that might be new to the show about your history in the Army.
For sure, yeah. So I joined the military at age 19, influenced by my uncle who was in the Air Force Reserves. He asked me what I was going to do when I graduated high school. I don't even know what I had. I didn't think I had any kind of plans. And so he told me, you should try the military, but go part-time first, because if you go full-time and you don't like it, you're stuck in that contract for 4 years or whatever that long, you pick. And so I was like, all right, cool. So I initially signed up for the Air Force. It didn't make sense until later of why the Air Force rejected me, or why I wasn't able to join the Air Force. So I ended up going home from that MEPS with the Air Force saying that you can't join this branch. You could join any other branch. And a National Guard recruiter called me that evening. He came over to my grandparents' house, promised me $1,000 bonus. And at 19, $1,000 bonus? Like, oh, shoot, right? Okay, what else you got? And, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what? My grandmother was there, and I was like, yeah, I'll take that. So I did the National Guard. I was a fuel handler, truck driver. Spent in the riots of LA riots. I was in the riots on the streets that night that everything happened. And then about 4 years into that, I liked it, and I felt like I could do this full time. And so I went into the armory, and I asked the Readiness NCO at the time, like, hey, I want to go full time. Like, I want to go active duty. And he was like, oh, well, we got AGR positions. There's a clipboard. And I'm like, I don't know what AGR was, but it's Active Guard Reserve. So I went to the clipboard, and I saw a position that was available for supply sergeant clerk E4 at a headquarters company. And I was like, I think I could do that job. I wouldn't supply, but I'm like, I could probably do that. And so that it was due in like 3 days. And so I was able to get my packet together, all my uniforms, and take the picture and submit the packet. And that was 90. It's funny you said your time, because that was 93 going into 94. So I became AGR in 94 and did 20 years AGR. And had a great career. I was able to transfer to Michigan and back to California, stationed in Roseville, and around the city, Fort Irwin for a little bit. So I had a great career. Down until that episode of the sickle cell trait exertion during my Master's Sergeant Academy School was where my career came to an end, because I was found not fit for service because of those medical injuries. And so that was my spiral out of, who am I? Why am I here? What did I do? Why? But all the emotional stuff.
Yeah.
And so, based off all that, that led me here today to be on this show, of the stuff that I had to go through and transition from and deal with and work through. As I said, for myself, the war and peace of not just the activity of the military, but outside of that is in my mind, the war and peace. And so I really appreciate you, Greg, for being a part of this conversation, making it more of a DC conversation. But my question for you is, prior to the 19-year-old guy, we're looking at labels, right? So can you share with us where your family history is from, your ancestors are from, that brought you to, the United States?
Well, my father was a third-generation Floridian. So when people come up and say, people from Florida aren't from Florida, I say, yes, I am. So, but my mother was from upstate New York, and she had come down to Florida with her mother, and then her and my father met. So we lived just outside of Daytona. I was a surfer when I was in high school. I was very smart when I back in those days. I got lazy in high school. because I took up surfing, and
Makes sense.
and everybody was, yeah. So my grades went. I went from straight A's to some C's and with a few D's thrown in. So I felt like I had wasted my life after high school, because if I'd have applied myself, I could have done really well, but I didn't. So that's how I ended up as a truck driver. A friend of mine got me a job with the county, but I enjoyed it. But they were all. We always called them Bubbas. They were, educated. That's about all they could do in life, was drive a truck. There was not a lot of education and not a lot of drive in their life. They were happy with that. I'd be happy driving a truck every day of my life. Well, I wasn't happy, and I think that's what led me to go into the Navy. I went into the nuclear power field, which was very tough. But I had no trouble with it. I was really easy to go through the classes and stuff, and I excelled in all those classes. So it was a.
I want you to go. I want you to go further. But like, what brought what were your great grand? What brought them to Florida?
Dad's done. We've done a lot of ancestry work in the family. So where did the Cushings come from before the U.S.?
They came from England. We're about 90. I'm about 90 something percent English. That's it. Nothing extraordinary. A little bit from up in Denmark and Sweden. And I've got the usual point something percent from Africa, which everybody seems to have that. So that's because everybody. So it was interesting. It was very nice growing up. My mother's family, they came from England, and I had a relative that actually came over on the Mayflower, but wow. he was an indentured servant when he came over. So he worked. That's how he got to America.
Right.
So I've followed them all the way back, and it's very interesting. There's even a room. Who was it? I'm supposedly related to William the Conqueror. But if you follow the steps, there's one weak link in there. Well, he traveled with a nephew, and when he was doing all the conquering, and there was talk that nephew was actually his son.
Oh,
so
wow.
If it was, I'm related to that nephew. But if not, then I'm related to him. So,
wow.
But it doesn't really matter. That's so far back.
Yeah, no, and I asked that because I wanted to kind of set the foundation of this War and Peace conversation on how many of us join the military. Not for God and country, or I'm proud to be an American, but a lot of people join for that sense of belonging. A lot of people join for that education, for that opportunity, for a better life for their family. The way that our ancestors came to this country, looking for a better opportunity, and you find, people in the military that join because of citizenship. Oh, I got an opportunity to get my citizenship. Oh, I could go in the military and get my right. So there are different reasons why and why not that we join, right? And so that creates this culture of the military of all these different varieties of backgrounds that when you join the service and you go to boot camp, you got people that have never seen a black person before. You've got people that have never seen a Hispanic. You got people that are just in culture shock. You got guys that grew up on a farm that never had to take a shower, and now he's forced to take a shower. Like there was so different dynamics that come into this military life. And so I want to I want to start there. This first couple of minutes of for you. When you joined that Navy, and then, coming from where you come from, was there a culture shock with the different varieties of backgrounds of the cadets that you saw and met and became friends with?
I think there was a little bit of that. There was a lot of tension. Well, the area I grew up in, there was a lot of tension at that time, because we were having race relationships that were terrible. I mean, they canceled our prom because there was a fight over who the band was going to be. So they just canceled the whole thing, and there were a lot of people, fights breaking out and things like that. So when I joined the military, there I was in a that first morning I woke up, and about a third of the people in the room were Black, and then a bunch of them had accents that I couldn't understand. They were from different parts of the country. They were definitely different. I was always pretty easy to get along with, and I could fall right in with it. But there definitely was a difference, and I did see people that, hey buddy, you got to shower every day. You can't just pass that up. But there were people that thought that, it's not Friday yet, I shouldn't shower yet. So and like you say, it comes from where they grew up, because some of these people didn't have running water in their house when they showed up in there. So it was something different. Not sure what else.
No. Like I said, I appreciate that. Again, for me at 19 when I joined, and stepping into the reception center, and you've already got the pockets of people. You got the guys in the corner playing dice and shooting quarters. Who can get the quarters next to the wall first? And you're gambling over here. You got the barracks lawyer talking about what he learned in junior ROTC, and like you have all these different pockets, right? And it was still, for me, even a culture shock. Even though the way that I grew up in LA, it was still like, now I gotta get to know these people, from these different backgrounds and walks of life. And I remember my bunk buddy was a white guy, and I don't remember where he was from, but he ended up getting a blanket party in basic training, because when it was time for formation, he would always be the first one to line up, right? And you're supposed to be there like 15 minutes, 10 minutes early. But for some reason, my Black brothers was like, what's wrong with your buck buddy? Like, he's making, and so what it was is he was making them look bad, right? Because they wanted to be hanging out and chill. And then he's out there standing in formation by himself, lined up. And they were like, you better talk to your bunk buddy. And I'm like, so I went to him like, bro, like, you gotta calm down, man. It ain't that serious. But he continued. And so I tried to warn him, that they were going to come for him, and they did. And he was my battle buddy. But when that happened, the next day he went to go be somebody else's buddy. So we ended up switching battle buddies without even telling anybody, because he was so mad at me because of what they did to him. And so those are the things that, when you talk about war and peace, even amongst us as soldiers, as veterans, for some, there's still a little bit of, wedges there, right? And as I mentioned to you offline, is sometimes it showed up for me as the good old boy system, and how that system even showed favoritism. It showed that, if you're in the crowd, then my clique, then you're protected, you're covered. If you're not, then you don't fit in. And that goes all the way back to now. Here I am in a situation where I'm ready to give my life to death for you, and then outside of uniform, you can't even stand me. Like, how is your brain able to click that you're my buddy in uniform, and then when we are off base or go separate ways on the base, I don't even talk to you. Like, I don't even like him. Like, can you even speak to some of that, or a little bit of that?
Yeah. I can say this. I grew up with my grandmother and my mother and my father. They didn't see. I guess you could say they were colorblind. They treated everybody the same, and I got a good education from that. And when I was going through high school, I had a really good friend, a Black guy named Albert, and rest his soul, because he died of cancer shortly, a little while back. But we were best friends. And then one day he didn't show up when we were going to go to lunch, and he said, my friend said I'm not supposed to hang with you. I mean,
Oh,
that's
wow.
how the relations were back then. So, and it didn't, that bothered me that, you know, because I was always the one that was accused of going, you know, of being the racist, going the other way because of the color of my skin. So I got along great with everybody in boot camp. I laughed with everybody. We joked around. We, you know, and I had no problem fitting in with anybody, and I would back anybody up. It didn't bother me the color of their skin, as long as they were nice people. I just never. I would say people that were abrasive and not nice to be around, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way always.
Yeah.
But I saw that it wasn't a problem for me, but I did still see some racism while I was in the military. I did see some of that. And at first the culture was such that it wouldn't be good for me to bring it up. I could bring it to my boss and let him take it up the chain of command. But if I was to step up and say it, then I would be right there with everybody else. So it was difficult to bring up issues like that. I think the culture changed about halfway through my career. It's still not perfect, but it did improve some. The shock for me was when I got out of the military, because Jessica's been to South Carolina. It can be backwards. It can be way backwards. And I worked, because of my occupation, the places I worked were out in the country, away from the big cities. And it was like going back 20, 25, 30 years. It's crazy. And you did see the good old boy system. It was racial, and it was also based on where you lived. If I live on a little island, but I had to travel a long way to get to work, no matter where I go. But when I worked, it was like, you're not from here. So I had to prove myself more than anybody else. And I found out that I just kind of get pushed to the side all the time because I'm not from there. So
it's interesting to hear, though, that was your experience coming back from there, because I'm sure you know what a culture shock it was for me when I would come and visit you, you know, down south, because I was growing up here in Connecticut. It's another planet. That's a bit, I can't describe it any other way. And so it was a huge shock for me coming down there, but then also suddenly being in this space where okay, you're my dad and you're in the military, but when I'm not down there with you, it's easy to sort of not remember that, other than, you know, the postcards that I would get from the ports that you would pull into and things like that. And so I didn't have that like immersive military experience, but I still had like a real interesting culture experience when I would come, you know, down south, which is ironically where I was born, was in South Carolina. So, but I didn't live there for very long. So I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah. I always knew it was a shock for you to come down to South Carolina, because there's a big difference. I've traveled all around the country, and people are
now you keep saying big difference. You're describing something. What are you describing? What does that look when you say big difference? Say the big difference. What was the big difference?
I'll tell you. The racial mixture up north is 20 years ahead of down south. In other words, if you wanted to marry a white woman up there, let's see, I guess it'd be 30 or 40 years ago, probably would have been okay, but not in South Carolina. There was a lot of tension. I went to a wedding that broke out in a racial riot at a wedding. It was the craziest thing you ever saw. And, you know, everybody left there just shaking, and they were like, what the heck just happened? You know, and and it broke out because a black man came to the wedding and danced with a daughter of the father of the bride. And that was at the reception was at a whites only club. And there's still that here. We went to a reception a couple of months ago in a black only club.
What?
And it was interesting because there was my wife and my son and I, and everybody else there was black. And so that was, but like I said, we were invited and everything was fine. I knew a lot of the black people there. In fact, I used to work with one of them back when one of my other jobs, he worked for me. And we talked, and we're planning on going fishing together now. But stuff like that, there's still segregation down here. And the farther you get out of the big cities, the more obvious it is.
I've tried often to describe to people what it was like when I lived in rural Mississippi. There is no other experience that I've had. That was the first time. I mean, I had those experiences, little things here and there when I would come visit you growing up, but it wasn't until I lived in that part of Mississippi that I was like, I'm on planet Mars right now. Like it was wild to me, and the intentionality from all sides to stay to themselves. White people wanted to stay with white people. Hispanic people wanted to stay with Hispanic people. Black people wanted to stay with black people, and they didn't want nothing to do with each other. And that was fine with them. And this was let's see, less than 20 years ago. And so that was huge. That was a huge culture shock for me. I wanted to ask both of you guys, because as the topic of the show is war and peace, what were your thoughts about, or did you have firm thoughts about war in general when you were going into the military? And did that change? Did those thoughts about war change when you went to leave?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, you're our guest.
It was it's funny you should ask that, because I wrote a paper. I went to college for a half a year in between and I didn't like it because I thought I knew more than the professor, and I still think I do. But
you probably did too. You probably did.
I probably did, but I learned one thing: he's still a professor. It's just like that's there's other sayings like that they're always in that position, and you have to respect the position. And I did learn that in the military, that even though I had some officers that I didn't care for, they're still my officers, and I had to do what they told me to do. But anyway, I wrote a paper about the Vietnam War, and what struck me as odd was that here we are over there fighting, and a holiday came up, and they said, "Well, we're not going to fight, over Christmas Day." And it's like, well, if you can stop for one day, why can't you just stop? And that's what it always baffled me. And the paper was about limiting war. And if I was to get mad at somebody and I wanted to fight them, I'm going to do whatever it takes. There's not going to be, we're only going to use our fists today. I would probably pick up a baseball bat if I had to win a fight. But here we are, civilized people, and we've got a conflict going on, and we're going to say, okay, well, only these days we're going to fight, and we're only going to use these weapons, and we're only going to do this. And my thoughts are, you go into it to win. But the truth of the matter is, Farron and I, while we're in the military, I had nothing against the people we're fighting when we had wars. I had no problem with the people they're fighting, but I signed up to do it, so I'm going to follow orders. That's the way it is. But but it always struck me as odd that I may not have any gripe against the people we're fighting. It's all, and who does though? Is it the president against their leader? Is it,
Exactly.
why are we fighting? And I did question that a lot of times. There's different reasons why we were in wars and stuff, and sometimes they just don't make sense, to me. But like I said, I signed up and I agreed to it, so I do what I'm told, and that's the way it is in the military. So,
Right.
For me, I think back. I used to play with army men, so I was on the floor with the little army, and I still have a couple figures from my grandson's toys. But you growing up in that, you grew up in LA, and you've got gangs and you've got all that other stuff, and it's like a survival state of mind. But when I joined, it was more of a peacetime, so there really wasn't anything to really worry about during 1989 when I joined, except Desert Storm kicked in shortly, like a few years after I joined. But for the most part, no, I didn't even think about, like I said, I didn't even think about my life and going to war and fighting some country. It was just more of, okay, I was National Guard first, so we took care of earthquakes, national disasters, things like that. And even when the LA riots kicked off and I was mobilized that night, it was weird to be in my own city, to see my old stores burn down, the gas stations, the liquor stores, and then to see my people, even some of my friends, terrorizing the same city that we grew up in. And then now I'm the bad guy because I'm in this camouflage. So I'm hated just like the police officers are. So, in that Minutemen National Guard mindset, it wasn't until this last war that the National Guard really got mobilized to go to war and to overseas and things like that, because we were known for just making sure that your state was safe, taken care of and national disasters. But when that culture shifted around 2000 for California, it was 2003, they started mobilizing the National Guard units. I was one of the first trainers that took a unit up to Camp Roberts, and we had nothing to train them with. Like, I'm making gunshot sounds with my gloves for them to do the 5-second buddy rush and so it was like that was the beginning of it. And then after the service is where I felt like I was taught at 19 to objectify another human being, to be a other, and then or to be a terrorist and kill terrorists. That was my shocker when I realized that that's what I was trained to do, trained to be that kind of person. So now, I could objectify any person to be a other, and then but when we talk about our whole series of conversation, that's what that is we label one another to the point where you're not a human being anymore. You're not a person. You're whatever. You're a guy with that army hat on. And I'm gonna talk to you like people talk about guys with army hats. Like when you realize that and you discover that for yourself, it's like, man, that was hard to swallow. Because then I could see it all over the world in different conversations.
It's interesting hearing from you being stationed in the U.S. here and that being like it, the way you described it feeling so close to home. Did you ever feel, Dad, disconnected to like what you were actually doing because you weren't necessarily here, like you were under the water, like you're in a capsule, you're under the water, you're far away from here? Because I think about that often when it comes to war, how so many things are off our lands here. So I think it's easy for civilians to forget about the things that are going on. So was that something that, like, did you feel connected to it, Dad, or was it separated?
I felt connected to it. I was many times thankful I was where I was, and not so much involved with the hand to hand and actually meeting the enemy, I guess you could say. the same feeling was when things were going on back home. When I would get news about, we would get news and it would tell you what's going on. I would hear about riots and stuff, and I'd be like, I'm out here trying to make the world better, and people are back home rioting, and that is that's
counterproductive,
upsetting, I guess you say.
right? Counterproductive.
Yeah, it's let me tell you this. We hear stories about what other people are like, and we should hate these people, or these are our enemies and everything. I went to Iceland a couple of years back, and I met a bunch of people from Russia, and they were all Russians, and they were fine. There was no hatred. They didn't hate me. Nobody tried to beat me up or anything. It was like, but for years they were our enemy, and that and I had to think about that a lot, because that's what I've been taught. I've been taught in school, they're heathens, they're this and that. At the end of this meeting, they said the Lord's Prayer.
Wow.
And it took a lot of it really set me back, because that's not what I was taught in school. That's not what they told me about Russians.
That's nice.
It made me question what I was taught on everything. So, it was a life lesson for me, and very eye-opening,
That's beautiful.
Because we knew where they were when we were out there, and that's what our job was, to keep them away from you guys on the shore. So,
It's wild, because there's a conversation that as I got into this veteran suicide and veteran, all the stuff that we deal with is emotionally and physically, and homelessness. One of the things that even today in the military is still the separation and the labeling, even when it's now the political parties. And so people forget that there are some white people, or should I say there's some white-skinned people that don't like white-skinned people, right? And so the labeling has been just focused on, okay, it's blacks and whites and Mexicans, but there is a group prior to, as you said, indigent servants, second-class citizens that came to this country, right, to fleeing from wherever they were fleeing from famine or war or being killed, that when they settled in the United States, they didn't get along. And they joined the military. And those same conversations that are portrayed more as a black and white issue, we don't look at, well, there is still a white skin issue still, right? And so when for my part of this series, is we're going to pull the label off. We got to pull all the labels off so that people could sit back and really start to tell the truth. Hey, you know what? The Italians didn't get along with these, and the Irish, there was a lot of stuff that went on like that it doesn't get addressed, because there's a percentage of the conversation that's now just focused on the color issue and not the ancestral issue that really is a part of today, that just doesn't get addressed. Or you'll hear that one of those cultures point to the black people and they talk for us, like, why are you talking for me? Like, why are you talking for me? I'm black and you're but you got something to say about my culture? Like, how do you get to do that? And then I say something and I'm a problem, but you get to speak. And so all of that we see, but when we look at the skin color, it's the labeling, right? So anything you want to say about that, as far as, to prior in the service experience or even outside of the service experience? I know that's tough.
Yeah, like I said, it was real rough when I was in high school. I found out many years later. There was a young lady I went to high school with, a black girl, and she worked where my father did. And every time I went home, he asked how I was, and said that this girl asked about me. And I finally found out years later that she really liked me, and she wanted to be my friend, but she couldn't because we weren't allowed to associate. And that's sad, because I liked her. She was a very nice person, and I would have liked to know more about her, but I couldn't, because that was the way the culture was. And what you just spoke about, I see that a lot now. There's and it's geographical, I guess you could say, north and south. There's a separation between educated and now you got the political that's gotten so bad. The different sides of politics that separates all of us.
Guess what we're talking about next episode.
And that is not that's not based on the color of our skin. That's just how you can hate somebody just because they have a difference of opinion. You have to look at that as their opinion. I try to look past that, and I'll just change the subject if I need to, because I don't like when people get upset, because a lot of people will go into the fight mode with that. If you say anything, it's like I wouldn't wear a hat that said I was Democrat or Republican. I just wouldn't do it, just because I know it's going to upset some people so bad that people would come up and punch you, if they didn't agree with you. And it's like, it's not worth that to me. I judge people by the way they treat me. And if you treat me good, it doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
There
was a military article just a few years ago when all this Trump stuff and political stuff happened, and the Secretary of Defense was trying to figure out what is going on in the military and why this whole uproar of separation with soldiers. And even when the storming of the Capitol, we're like, why are those white people storming the Capitol? Like, people don't think about, it's not the white skin, it's the opinion of that person that would make that person stand up and then actually go and storm the Capitol. But people are like, why are those? And so when you label it, it's like, why are the white people storming the Capitol? But they don't realize that there are some white skin that don't like white skin, and that's the labeling that we've been talking about on this episodes of Beyond 2D, which is how do we start to tell the truth about those stories that we don't really talk about, right? Because I can imagine that if I was directly connected to slavery as such, that maybe that part of that conversation would be a little bit embarrassing, right? It could be a little shameful that my ancestors had to flee from a country of famine and to come here and then and then all the stuff that, we all settled in our different ghettos. And so it's like, we talk about even Notre Dame, like the Fighting Irish, like that term was created from them getting out of the potato farms and trying to go how they got into football, right? And but that was a derogatory kind of a statement that they made for them. Even I just learned recently about the Hoosiers of Indiana. There's a lady that talked to Caldwell that said that was a derogatory statement when you called them Hoosiers, which is no different if the N-word is a derogatory conversation. But each culture had their own thing, even back years ago, that was hurtful when you said that term to them, right? But we don't talk about those topics. We don't address that to say, hey, you know what? We're all dealing with something underneath it all, regardless of my skin color. We're all dealing with some emotional tragedy or some emotional fracture that's connected to not just my skin color, but my ancestry and the subjects around those conversations of the embarrassment or disappointment or the shame that could be connected to it. So I'm not, at least I ain't black. Like we deal with the same stuff, right? But at least I ain't black. But you selling drugs, you're running guns, and you're running moonshine. You're doing the same thing. You're on welfare of the same things that blacks are, but at least we ain't black. And that's something that, like, no, that conversation has to end somewhere.
Yep.
Jessica, what you think?
I don't know. No, man. No, listen, this conversation is to me becoming, and then we do it, and there's not a lot in there of like really, well, what do you think? And that's why I wanted to ask that question about, how did you feel? Did you have a strong opinion about war and what that meant when you were going into the military, and then how do you feel about it now? Because I think that when we're young, and when I was 19, I wasn't thinking about that kind of stuff, even having a parent in the military, that wasn't something that I really thought about. Like I said, I growing up in this area and it being, really focused on military, I didn't move around like a lot of my friends did. I didn't have that military lifestyle, I guess you could say. And so I wasn't around it a whole lot, but I still didn't, I don't think as a child we're necessary, like we're taught certain things to an extent, and then that's it. And so it's not until we're older and really start to put pieces together for ourselves where we start to go, oh, okay, like starting to make sense now and everything. So I think that this is a great conversation that we've had tonight to lead up to, as I said, next episode. It's the week of Thanksgiving that we're going to be here, and I'm excited because we're talking about politics. The week of Thanksgiving, and so I'm hoping that some of these conversations that we have had will help bring some healing to your Thanksgiving table. I really do, because I know personal friends of mine last year whose own children would not come over for Thanksgiving because of who everybody was voting for. And I cannot sit back and say that's, I don't care the meaning behind it. It's just not okay. And so I hope that these conversations will continue to be healing for people. And so I will ask for everybody's final thoughts on this topic of war and peace before we end the show tonight. Why don't you kick us off, Dad? Any final thoughts you want to leave with people tonight?
Yeah, I would say that I find that peace is in my heart. If I'm at peace with myself, then that's what I'm looking for. I've had some very wonderful moments where I just felt, I felt close to God, and I felt, I'm in the right place, doing the right thing. I'm where I want to be, and then I'm at peace. So, and I try not to let what's going on in the world take that away from me. Because if you worry about everything else going on, you'll never find peace.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Farron.
Yeah, thank you. I want to say this for those of you in the world that, these holidays come up and Veteran Days come up and Memorial Day. You got to remember that for some of us, these days are not for celebration. For a lot of us, we lost brothers and sisters. We've had friends take their life. And so just be mindful of when you say thank you for your service, that there are friends and fellow soldiers and people that are connected to those thank yous, that we're here fighting for change. And we're here fighting for one every 65 minutes. They say a veteran brother or sister completes their life, like one every 65 minutes. And so there are some of us out here being and doing the work to help interrupt some of that if we can. Like, we know that I only get an opinion about why, who, where people die. Like, we understand that. But there are some deaths that could be premature, that a person feels lost, right? And so you have to think about, I'm not a combat veteran, but I've had friends that went to war, kill, come home, and then they're sitting with their own child. And then one day their mind says, oh, no, I took somebody's son's life. I took somebody's dad, and I get the privilege to be here with my child. they tell me that doesn't feel good. That's not a celebration when the reality sets in that when you objectify a human being to a terrorist, that your mind might remember one day that was a person, not a terrorist. And so I ask people to just be mindful. We love to be sincere and we thank you for the recognition. But for some of us who didn't go to war like that, who live with survival's remorse, because like I wanted to go and be a part of that, and then I couldn't go because of the way my unit was set up, like some of us live with that too. So just be mindful as people, as we start to talk about the label veteran, we're people first. Greg was a surfer first before, which is another label, right? I just labeled him as a surfer. You see how our language is so powerful that we label one another to describe each other. And that just doesn't work all the time in particular conversations. So I'm very grateful for today. You know, it is a celebration. I really came into this conversation just kind of in a kind of calm state. I spoke yesterday at a veterans event. Today it was like, you know what, I'm preparing for the show, but I was just in this kind of mood. Like, you know, war and peace for me it's not just the physical, it's the emotional. And this country is at war and peace with topics, right? And so that's why we're on Beyond 2D.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'll say, I mentioned that I was processing this week what the label of being a veteran's daughter meant to me, and it's always been important to me. I think I was taught, not just from my dad, but from, like I said, the culture in this area, to have tremendous respect for our military. And I think too that I realized that the moment that it hit me, the moment I first ever felt fear about my dad being in the military, I can remember during the Gulf War, when I remember hearing something on TV and it hitting me and it was during time that Dad was out to sea. And I just remember having this moment of like, oh, like he's not here right now, you know, and having that thought. And so it's been interesting to process this last week, that period of time in particular. And I think that you're both right in a lot of different ways. One, that peace does live within. And I go back to what I was saying before, that people are often just doing what they're taught and doing what they're told to do. And so there's that. There is reason enough to have conversations with people. And if we're having more conversations within our home, maybe if that's happening in our homes, we can have more conversations outside of our homes. And maybe we don't need to get to this place of war that I feel like is constant now. It's just constant. And it's all we hear about. And so I would echo back what my dad said tonight, that peace lives within. And I want to end on a little bit of a fun note, because we had some fun comments come in while the show was going on. And Stacy said, "Thank you both for your service, so that I was born into and grew up in a country with freedoms." And thank you, Stacy, for that. And she talked about the war in our minds is often very fierce. That's a whole. There's a lot of people that haven't gone to war that are going through it up there. And the people are blown away that Santa is also a surfer. And Brittany said, "First I see Santa on a tugboat. Now I'm learning he was a surfer too. My mind is blown." So there's that. And then
they ain't even know it.
Margene said, "Hey, Grandpa." So there's that. So thank you, Dad, for being here today and sharing your experience. And
thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's always fun to have you on. And as I mentioned, next episode is happening Tuesday, November 25th, 2025. And we are going to be who came up with this stuff, Farron? Was it us? Oh,
yes.
Okay.
We agreed. We agreed mutually.
We talked about labels and belonging. We talked about race. Tonight, we talked about war and peace. And next episode, we're talking about politics. is what we're doing.
I lost a friend.
I know you were saying
an
that.
associate, a veteran brother, to this last conversation of politics. Like, he disowned me. Like, don't talk to me. I can't believe you. only because I wouldn't bash Trump like society was. Like, I have no problem with the dude. But because I wouldn't voice my opinion about him, then I must be for him.
But see, you're right. And that's why I'm glad we're having these conversations, because people think that because you come out here peaceful with peace in your heart and you say, I don't have anything to add to this conversation, they take that and say, well, that means that you and put whatever label on you that they want without going, okay, well, let's have a conversation about it. You know, so then they just get mad, and we are not partaking in this.
I'll tune into that next show.
You want to come back on and talk?
No, I don't want to be on. I'm just
oh, come on.
Doesn't it sound fun though? It's going to be good. Tune in Tuesday, November 25th, 2025, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Put your surfboards away. Come watch the show. Come watch the show.
And don't pull the sled out yet either.
Come on. That would be fun. See, Dad's over at my brother's house who has his tree up.
I'm looking like, can I get in there? I'm like, is that a Christmas tree? Like, are those Christmas lights already?
Yeah, there it is.
His other brother has had his Christmas lights up all year.
Hey, that's a lot of work to take them down, to put them up and take them down all year. Hey,
he turns them on every night.
Power to the people. Power to the people.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in wherever you are in the world today. We certainly appreciate you. And on behalf of everybody here at the Breakthrough Show Network, we extend our heartfelt thanks to all veterans of the United States military today. We appreciate you and value you so very much. And I'm Jessica Dugas.
Hey, thank you for paying your taxes, too, out there. We appreciate y'all, too.
I'm Jessica Dugas. This is my very sometimes outspoken co-host over here, Farron Dozier. Thanks to my dad, Greg Cushing, for being here today. We appreciate you, Dad. And we will see you next time on another episode of Beyond 2D. Bye, everybody.
Peace out.